So today, this is learning session 3 for the Colorado Business Process Reengineering project that's been happening for a little bit over a year now. This is the virtual version of learning sessions. We have been out in person to do learning sessions in the past, but as you know, the world is pushing us onto the virtual virtual world these days. So mostly what I want to give folks a heads up about is that you are going to have a better experience in this workshop if you can see the screen. And also if you can participate via audio as well. So there are a couple of different ways to do that. And if your computer audio is not gonna be sufficient for you, there's also a way to dial in and using your participant code to connect your phone to your computer system. So we really encourage folks to be able to both see the screen and to be able to call in so that we can hear you, because we really want this to be as participatory as possible, and we'll learn a lot from you all during this workshop as well. So welcome. What we are talking about today is using your county dashboards to help you monitor the health of your caseload. So I just want to give a caveat that this is not a technical training on dashboards. This is more a training or a workshop on learning about how to incorporate dashboards into your continuous process improvement practice. So thinking about data and thinking about how you can use data to make improvements to your business processes. So today, this is what we have on the agenda. I will just give a heads up that we didn't use the full hour and a half last session, so we might not need all of that time today either. But the plan is to obviously do a little bit of a welcome and an introduction. Those of you who are familiar faces might be tired of our Zoom tips and tricks by now, or maybe one of you wants to volunteer and do Zoom tips and tricks since you're getting so used to using Zoom with us now. We'll do some ground rule review, and then we will go over the toolkit. So you should have in your email a PDF of the county dashboard toolkit, so you can use that to follow along with us today as we're talking. And I'll go over the contents of that, and then we will spend a little bit of time in a small group activity kind of talking about how you might currently be using dashboards and maybe some opportunities for you to consider implementing them maybe a little bit more formal amongst your teams. So we'll start with some introductions this morning. Again, my name is Karen Ellis. I work with Kone Consulting. We've been working with PCG and the performance improvement team at HICPUF on the continuous improvement efforts for counties and Medicaid sites. I will turn it over to Erica to say hello.
Hi there, I'm Erica Larimer, also with Kone Consulting. I will be handling some things behind the scenes, so if you find you're having any technical difficulties, feel free to shoot me a message in the chat function. And looking forward to your presentation, Karen.
Thank you, Erica. Okay, Christina, you want to say hi to the group?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Christina Cruz from PCG. You may have seen me at the EDMS learning session. I'll be helping Karen today in the background, and we'll be joining during the breakout session. So thanks for being here.
Thank you, Christina. I also want to give a moment to shout out to folks from the performance improvement team. Oturo, do you want to say hello to everyone?
Hi, everybody. I hope everyone's doing good. Happy Wednesday. I might be the only one on for the moment. I think Vanessa's going to jump on here in a second, but just thank you guys for joining. And you know, this is kind of the last, well, tomorrow's our last learning session. It's kind of a big deal because we've been doing all these things for, gosh, the last year. And we really just want to encourage those folks that we appreciate those that have attended all the learning sessions. I know there's some of your counties have really represented. And if there's anything that we can do as a team, the department, performance improvement team, we're here to serve you guys, help out, support. If you've not received any kind of lean training in the past, your county, or we're here to help. This project's going to end June 30th, unfortunately, with our vendor, PCG and Kone, but we're going to continue forward. So I just wanted to put that blast out there. We probably didn't do the best job with all the other ones to do that, but just something to kind of keep sharing that we're going to still be around and here to support you guys in any way we can.
Thank you, Arturo. I do see Vanessa is on the line as well. Vanessa, you want to say hey to folks? Maybe not ready for the camera moment, but you'll probably see Vanessa in breakout rooms as well. So, and then for all of you that are joining us, some of you are already hip to adding your county name to your Zoom name, but if you also want to say hello in the chat feature, and then also to maybe tell us what your role is at your county. I think we were definitely aiming this workshop more towards folks that are supervisors or leaders in their counties or eligibility sites, mostly because those are the folks that are able to access dashboards. So we really see there being a lot of value for you learning from each other as well. So maybe if there is an opportunity to make some connections from your peers at other counties, we're definitely encouraging that today as well. So I am going to hand it over to Erica to talk through some Zoom tips and tricks for you all.
Thanks, Karin. So yes, I agree. By now, many of you already know how to finesse all the Zoom tips and tricks. So it'll be either a refresher or a time to grab a cup of coffee. So we're looking at how to unmute yourself and also appear on video. This is important if we want to have a real engaging workshop today, especially as we go into breakout rooms. The lower left-hand corner of your Zoom screen, you'll see a microphone and you'll see a little camera, and of course the carrots that give you the opportunity to see some drop-down boxes and options to share your audio or video. If you'd like to make sure that your toolbar appears along the bottom, which is helpful if you want to toggle between participants and the chat box, you'll want to go into your meeting controls and indicate that you always want to show meeting controls. So I did mention the chat function, and looks like a few of you have already said good morning. So if you click on the little speech bubble with the 3 ellipses, you'll get a chat function on my screen, right-hand side of your Zoom screen. And in that way, you can either speak directly with anyone in the meeting or everyone all at once. So you'll note that there's an option to discuss private. So if you have a technical issue and you're able to use the chat function, again, I'm Erica, so you can scroll down from the blue drop-down menu and select me and just have a private conversation with me, and we'll help sort that out. If you want to see who else is on the call or how many participants, you're welcome to click on the participant box. I also can help with muting and unmuting, so if you're struggling with that, you can shoot me a message and I can help with that as well. And then finally, or maybe second to last, we personally prefer the gallery view, and that way we can see everybody that's participating. That is done by going up to the upper right-hand corner of your screen, and if you see speaker view written, then you're already on gallery view. When you click, if you see gallery view, when you click on that, then you'll see all of the squares Brady Bunch style. But it's personal preference, so knock yourselves out. Next. I'm getting a little goofy as we're in the home stretch here. Renaming yourself. And again, I see I can shout out to Jessica and Mesa, and Jessica and Logan, and Michelle and Mesa, David Troy. We've got lots of folks that have already done this in their Zoom name boxes. Matter of fact, I think all of you have done it. So I don't even need to tell you how to do this. Rock on. Take it away, Karin.
You all win the prize for renaming yourselves. So well done. Well done. You're officially a regular at this venue. So we also just wanted to go over a couple of ground rules before we get started. If we were convening in a room together today, we would ask you to be present with us while we are talking today. And that would typically mean, putting your email away and stepping away from your instant messenger messages from your team. That's sometimes harder to do when you are looking at your computer while you're participating in this, but we just really are wanting folks to be present with us and try to limit the distractions as much as you can. Obviously, you have a lot of things going on for work right now, so we totally understand if you need to step away for a moment. But as I mentioned, we really want this to be interactive, and we really want you to be able to participate and add your knowledge, which is the second ground rule, is that we are really excited to be learning from one another today, and really just respecting and valuing each other's experiences. The last ground rule is just for the ability to reduce background noises. We're asking that you stay on mute unless you have something to say, but make sure you find your mute button so that you know how to unmute yourself, because we definitely want to be hearing from folks today. So let's jump into the meat of this conversation. So what is this dashboard toolkit exactly? What you will find in your toolkit is a little bit of a background on the county dashboards, and an overview of what some of the indicators are that you can find on the dashboard. And then there are some tools and some resources in figuring out how to incorporate dashboards into efforts towards continuous improvement practices. So that includes an assessment activity through the use of value stream improvement. Some of you did some value stream mapping either during a previous learning session, or if we have, I don't think we have any Model Site folks with us on the line today, but some of the model sites also did some value stream mapping. So we will do a little bit of an overview of what that looks like today. There is also an action planning tool in the toolkit. This is really meant to help with implementation and to help you kind of practice the PDSA cycle of trying, trying different pilots and then seeing if you're making any changes and then kind of reevaluating. Yes, thank you, Arturo. Logan, I think you were the one location in the state that I didn't get to in person. So I am bummed that I did not get out to see you, but thank you for Arturo for reminding me. So we do have some value stream mapping experts on the line today, which is exciting. Other couple of resources included in your toolkit is a sample meeting agenda. We think it's really important to be thinking through kind of who is included in meetings around making decisions about incorporating data into your continuous improvement efforts, and also some kind of key discussion questions to help think through some of the decisions that would need to be made. And then the communication tools is another resource in the toolkit. And we're going to get into that. I'm probably going to dive deepest into the communication tools today, because we think that that's really important for the dashboard conversation, because the dashboard data is limited to who can access it. It's limited to supervisors. That is an overview of what you have in your email inbox from us if you want to follow along today. Okay, so what are dashboards? So the CBMS County dashboards provide kind of a high-level overview of information. When we have talked to counties and eligibility sites, they have told us that they find that there is useful information to monitor workflow and also to help guide decisions about how to manage workloads. So that is the what as far as dashboards go. And as I mentioned before, they are currently accessible to supervisors, administrators, or managers. And that's why a communication plan around sharing dashboard information is important, because currently not everybody on your team is able to access this tool. And as of, I think, June of 2018, dashboards are available to you on your CBMS homepage, so you don't have to go to Cognos anymore to pull them up. They are a little bit easier to be accessed now than they had been in the past. And the why behind checking dashboards is really, information to kind of help you figure out where to prioritize time and resources. And really what we see the value is having information to support timely and accurate eligibility decisions. So the goal of looking at the data is to look for opportunities to make improvements, and to practice some of your lean practice in order to make improvements and of the health of your Medicaid cases. So again, for all of the regulars of the room, you know what time it is when we pull up the pulse check slide. We want to get a sense from you all kind of who is checking dashboards, maybe what frequency you're checking dashboards, and if you're not checking dashboards, what sort of data that you're looking for. So you'll see a little poll pop up on your screen. We're hoping that you can answer a few of these questions to give us a kind of a sense of who is in the room today and kind of what your experience with dashboards is. Looks like we've got a mixture of folks today that are about half and half for folks that are checking dashboards at your site pretty regularly. Which is good. That's a good blend of folks to be learning from each other. Do we have anyone else that's still working on taking the poll? Thank you, everybody. We've got a daily checker. That's cool. I think actually, yeah, you should be able to see the results of the poll now to get a sense of who else is on the in the room with us, in the virtual room with us. So again, we've got a little bit of a mixture of folks that are checking pretty regularly and folks that are not. But it looks like most folks are, well, I guess what I will say is what we've learned is that even if your site isn't using dashboards, most folks are getting some sort of a report somewhere or somehow on kind of what the status of your, you know, how you get a sense of how things are going in your office. So thank you very much for participating in that. Okay. So for those of you that are not checking dashboards, this is what the summary screen of dashboards looks like. There are 14 different dashboards total, and 8 of these are Medicaid related. What we learned when we have been talking to counties and eligibility sites is that the dashboards that folks find the most helpful and check the most often are actually the top 2. So a lot of folks are checking the application timeliness dashboard, and a lot of folks are checking the RRR timeliness dashboard. I think about 80%, 70% of folks found those to be the most helpful and the ones that they are checking the most frequently. And then about half of the folks that we reached out to also said that they find the pending applications dashboard pretty useful, and they're also checking the peak inbox and the backlog board. Those are the most frequently checked and what folks are finding to be most helpful. So I'll be curious to hear from you all that are checking what you tend to gravitate towards and what you find helpful in your process. And as I mentioned, these are all available now through CBMS, so you don't have to take extra steps to pull reports from Cognos anymore. And there are some newer features as well. There are some filtering and customization options now. It's also fully integrated with CBMS. You're able to see kind of expanded claim information, expanded date ranges, and customer notifications, and the ability to view the backlog. So for those of you less familiar with dashboards, these are newer features as of, I think, June of 2018. And these are also included, my understanding is that these are included in the actual dashboard training. So if you're interested in learning a little bit more about how to filter or how to kind of customize dashboard data that might be more useful to you all, I would encourage you to look for the training to get more information about how to make the dashboard tool work for you. So get ready to find your mute button because we're going to be asking you to kind of share your experience with us in just a moment. But what I really wanted to talk about here is the kind of broader relationship that folks have with data. I think as the world has become more data driven, it's actually kind of caused us to have some bad habits around using data, particularly around judging people's performance. So we've heard sometimes that performance measures can kind of be used in a punitive fashion, and what we really want to see is people, excuse me, is using data for the purpose of looking for opportunities for continuous improvement. Because people are always going to make mistakes. None of us are perfect. We all work a little bit differently, and we all have kind of different strengths and challenges. So really, when you're looking at data, looking at kind of overall trends, looking for changes over time, looking for patterns, you know, kind of putting your detective hat on and looking for patterns and changes. We really kind of encourage folks to come at this from a curiosity perspective rather than like figuring out how to be punitive about it. So I'm curious and looking, excuse me, one of the ways that we think it would be helpful to use dashboards towards continuous improvement is looking at kind of managing your workloads and making decisions about maybe where you can drive work if you're a task-based county, and also thinking about if there are certain trends around errors or backlogs in one particular location, to think about if that is an opportunity for where there might be a need for more training. So really just helping kind of give you a better sense of where things are at for your eligibility site. So I'm curious, do we have any folks that are bold enough to either add something in the chat feature or to take themselves off mute to talk to us about how you think, how you're either currently using data to help identify opportunities for improvement, or maybe some hopes that you have for using dashboard data to help with continuous improvement practices at your eligibility site.
Hi, this is Sabrina. Can you hear me?
Hi, Sabrina. Yes, we can. Thank you for being the first bold person to unmute yourself. We appreciate it.
Well, everybody says I talk a lot, so it's fine. The only thing I'd say is that the dashboards, I work in Garfield County, so we don't tend to use them a whole bunch just because a lot of the information that's already on them, we already had reports that say the exact same thing, or the report subscriptions that we have, some of them are the same as those, so I subscribe to the report subscriptions and then I have all the information, so some of it's duplicative, so that's why we tend not to use some of it. And then another thing is some of the information I know is still being worked on because, like for instance, one of the dashboards is for long-term care, and the information that comes on the long-term care is, I'm gonna say like 50% helpful right now, and 50% causing me more work. So it's great because it gives me like a list of some dates of things, but then if you have to individually go into each case because each of those isn't actually due, or it was due, but we already received something. So like I said, so sometimes it sort of causes me more work than it actually caused me just to have the list. But anyways, that's sort of, so that's a little bit of why we don't necessarily use the dashboards. And because also we have, so there's 6 team supervisors, but for the most part, I'm like, one of the supervisors is responsible for kind of watching the reports and then disseminating out that information. So we don't need everybody to look at all the dashboards all the time because we just have one person that's in charge of kind of monitoring that sort of a thing and then pushing it out to people like, hey, this one's due today or this one's due tomorrow. So you don't necessarily need to. So anyways, that's kind of how our process works here.
Yeah, thank you, Sabrina. That makes sense to me. We have heard that some counties and some sites are using other reporting systems. So you might have someone at your county that's looking at dashboards, but then they are compiling data into a spreadsheet and sending it out to your team. So that's definitely something that we've heard might be happening as well. Yeah, thank you for sharing. Does anybody else want to explain kind of what's happening at your eligibility site around data, and what, if you have a process for kind of sharing dashboard information out to your team already?
This is Kirsten in Crowley County.
Hi, Kristen.
We've done some reorganizing and adding some missions. We're really small, but there's a couple of us taking on some supervisory roles.
I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time hearing you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is that better?
Yes, yes, good.
Okay. So anyways, we've added a couple new technicians and some new supervisory roles. So I'm hoping that the dashboard can be a good tool for supervision going forward.
Yeah, do you currently have some way of kind of monitoring the health of your cases right now? What do you, or something that you go to already to kind of see where you're at?
So we historically have, we've just had 2 technicians, and so now we have 4. And so we've kind of historically just monitored our own.
Sure.
And now that we're adding 2 brand new technicians, we're going to need to do a little bit more of monitoring other people's. So that's why I'm hoping this can be helpful.
Yeah, congratulations on adding new technicians. That's exciting, I'm sure, to be able to handle your workload right now.
For sure. Yep.
Yeah, cool. Anybody else that wants to share? Thank you, Janice, for sharing. Janice at Logan County says that they don't use dashboards much either. They have a Cognos report that they use because it's more detailed, and it's you're more quickly able to share it, and get timeliness reports from each program group as well. So that's definitely one way to have a customized report that's a little bit more detailed, I think. And another example, one of the things that we've heard is that a limitation to dashboard is that it's not easy to share. So that makes sense, Janice, that you've got another set of reports that you're looking at. I'm kind of wondering if there's someone on the back end that is using dashboards when they're compiling that, or if it's something that Cognos is able to pull on its own. So thank you for sharing, Janice. Anybody else want to say what you're doing at your county or eligibility site before we move on to the next topic? Okay, I counted to 10, which is the rule. So moving on, I just really appreciate you being folks that are being that are sharing with us, because it is really interesting, I think, to learn from each other as well. So appreciate you willing to unmute yourselves and adding to the chat today. Okay, so value stream improvement. I might be picking on folks from Logan that participated in some value stream mapping to share with us about your experience for value stream improvement today as well. But the value stream improvement lean tool is really an opportunity for an assessment. It gives you a way to kind of step back and look at your workflow a little bit differently. I think a lot of us kind of get stuck in the day-to-day grind, and sometimes it helps to be able to take a step back and put your detective hat on or your curious hat on and to be able to look at your workflow a little bit differently to kind of give you an opportunity to look for things that you might want to change or might want to try to improve upon. So all a value stream is a sequence of work or events that your organization does to fulfill a customer's request. So the lens that we typically look through when we're looking at value stream is the lens of the customer and kind of what their experience is like. So in the world of Medicaid eligibility, what your customer is looking for is a timely and accurate eligibility decision, right? They want to find out fairly quickly if they are approved or denied and kind of what the next steps are. Value stream mapping is a really nice way of being able to visualize your work as well. And it doesn't have to be, you don't have to have a fancy tool to do this. We typically use Post-it notes and Sharpie markers. So it is a very accessible way to visualize your work and to look for opportunities for improvement. So what we think about when we think about value stream maps and county dashboards is considering one business process associated with the data that you can get from county dashboards and mapping out the value stream of that business process. So what that will help you think about is kind of what your workflow looks like. And maybe where in that workflow you're getting information or data about the health of your workflow. And then we also think it's important to think about who is involved in the workflow. Oftentimes we have a handful of different folks that are touching cases in different ways. When, for instance, an application is coming through, you might have someone at your front desk that's touching it and scanning it, and then someone else that might be indexing it, and someone else, an actual technician that's going to be processing it. So that gives you an idea of who is each workflow is affecting, and that might give you some ideas about who you might want to include in a conversation about using data towards continuous improvement practices. And then it also gives you an idea of who the information might benefit. So getting a sense of who it's going to be important to get data back out to so that they can use it to make decisions about their kind of daily workflow even as well. So you'll find this diagram in your toolkit as well. This is really just kind of laying out the steps of what value stream improvement looks like. We really recommend that you do, if you have a larger team, we recommend that you do a little bit of a scoping process, mostly to figure out like what's on the table and what's off the table. So for example, when we do value stream mapping with folks, one of the things that we typically have to make pretty clear in the beginning is that when you do your mapping process and you decide, hey, if we had 3 more technicians, we could really like nail this out a lot faster. But in reality, that is really hard to do. The reality is that most folks aren't able to just expand their team in order to deal with the current workload. So, and what we are looking for when we're doing value stream mapping is not pushing work around. It is really figuring out how to find some efficiencies and to find ways to streamline work in order to make it smoother and easier for everybody involved. So the goal isn't just to push things around, it actually is to try to find some opportunities to streamline. So when you look next to number 3, that's actually the time that you sit down with your team or even just a couple of coworkers and really kind of map out your current state and look for opportunities for improvement. We also call them problems. This is one way to visualize if you've got some problems happening in your workflow as well. And then the next step after that is to do some action planning. And so we'll get into that a little bit as well. This is an example of a value stream map that we did in person at our last learning session. Mostly I just wanted to share this with folks so that those of you who have not done value stream mapping can get a sense of what it looks like. So every one of these little post-it notes is just one step in a process. And then we use different color post-it notes, and we use some kind of lines around the different post-it notes to identify opportunities for improvement. So that's just kind of your flagging parts of your process that you think that you might be able to streamline or to make improvements on. There are 4 things that we look for when we're looking for problems in a value stream map. One perspective that we're looking at, again, is the value for the customer. We're also looking at the flow of the work, and we are looking at the product or the quality of the outcome. And then this is also an opportunity to look for, learning opportunities, in particular around how you're managing your workflow. So we typically start with the current state, and by current state, we don't mean what is supposed to be happening. We mean what's actually happening. It doesn't help to map something out that resembles how things are supposed to go in your manual for policy and procedures, right? We really want to be able to see what is actually happening on the ground. And typically there is some value that's added here just in thinking about how you can standardize a couple of your practices amongst your team. So for Kirsten, this might be really helpful when you are onboarding a couple of new technicians to be able to walk through a process and see how you're standardizing things. Are your 2 technicians that are working on cases right now doing their process really similarly, or are folks doing things really differently? You might want to think about what is worth standardizing across your process, and maybe if there's an opportunity to make some improvements. So the process metrics, which is all of the writing underneath each of these post-it notes, this is also a kind of important part of this value stream mapping, because this is going to give you some metrics to work with, and ultimately what you are putting in these metrics is the wait time. So how long you might be waiting for something before you can start working on it, and that includes waiting on things from your customers or your clients, or waiting on something from another colleague before you can start working on it. There's also the amount of time that it takes to actually process something. And when we look at process time, we really look at if you are locked in a room with no other distractions, like how much time would it actually take you to complete that step in your process. And then we also look at delay time. So delay time is when you're not stuck in a room without any disruption. So that might be when you've got other phone calls coming in or other folks coming to the front desk. Just the natural delay that happens to any of us when we are trying to get our work done. So when there are big variances in your process metrics, that is another symptom or another sign that there might be an opportunity to streamline your work. So I'm going to just take a moment to take a breath and take a drink of water and give you all an opportunity, for those of you who have done some value stream mapping, if you want to share your experience, and give other folks kind of a sense of if you think that value stream mapping is an accessible kind of assessment for you all to take on at your eligibility sites. Thank you, Michelle. So Michelle from Mesa County says that they have used it, value stream mapping before, and it has been helpful to find decision points that are excessively complicated, or in processes that involve a lot of people, too many people. Sometimes we have too many cooks in the kitchen, and that can make decisions harder as well. Yeah, thank you for sharing, Michelle. Anybody else that has experience? Oh, David, thank you. David says at Logan County, they have used value stream mapping for several workflow processes and feel like they help with finding roadblocks and unnecessary processes. Yeah, that is true. So again, the value stream mapping really we see in the lean world as a tool to kind of take a step back and do a little bit of an assessment on your workflow and your business processes. So thank you, David and Michelle, for sharing. Appreciate that. And for those of you who have not value stream mapped before, again, this is just takes a whiteboard or some Post-it notes. It is a really pretty accessible tool for kind of looking at your business processes. Okay, moving along. The next topic and the next tool in your toolkit is about action planning. Really, all action planning is making some agreements together and thinking about how to make some changes. So this is another tool for helping with some decision-making processes. And what we added to the action planning section of your toolkit is some questions to kind of guide you in thinking about what you might want to try to implement at your eligibility site. So it's action planning or implementation planning, or this is really just a plan to kind of put some accountability in place and how you want to move forward in testing something out or piloting something out. So thinking about which dashboards that you might want to incorporate into a regular process. So for those of you who are looking at your other Cognos reports, we can just replace dashboards with data, I think, to some degree, because that's ultimately what we're wanting you to think through is, using data in whatever form that you can get it. Some folks only have access to dashboards, and some counties have a more robust data reporting for their business processes and decision making. So thinking about what data or what dashboards you want to incorporate into your regular process, what is it that we're trying to find out, what is it that we are trying to accomplish, and why is that data in particular important for us to be looking at. And then the other thing that we think is important is thinking about the frequency of checking your data. The dashboard data is most of it, except for some of the work dashboards, most of it is updated on a nightly batch, and so it's fairly real time information. But thinking about how frequently do we need to check dashboards? So sometimes daily information is not helpful and it's just information overload. Sometimes we need to know kind of where we're at on a day-to-day basis. Sometimes it might be better to look on a monthly basis. So you want to figure out what the right stride is for your frequency of checking your data. And then we also think it's important in the action planning efforts to think about the best way to share data is with the rest of the team. As I mentioned before, this is one of the limitations that we've heard about with dashboards is that it's not easy to like print or export. So for instance, we've heard from some folks that they're using a whiteboard in their break room to share data with their team, or kind of thinking about how you can set up your own dashboard in your office so folks are able to see information pretty regularly. I think we oftentimes rely on emails or shared drives, or I think there's oftentimes information overload and things can get lost in electronic processes. So just when you're doing your action planning with your team, to think through kind of what the best way to share information is in order for it to not get lost amongst the kind of the fire hose of information that we get on a regular basis. So, and then in the spirit of lean continuous improvement, we also think that you should be including the frequency of how often you're coming back to your action planning. So again, continuous improvement is not like a one and done, like, hey, you know, we're going to try this new thing and now we fixed it and we're moving along. It's really about revisiting what you've implemented and having a conversation with folks to see if it has been making any bit of a difference. So for those of you, there's a slide coming up here on the PDSA cycle, so we'll get to that. But the idea is that you're going to be revisiting your action plan and making some changes and discussing maybe what's improved or maybe what's not improved. So thinking about this from a cyclical perspective. The other kind of important, really logistical pieces of an action plan are the who, what, and the when. So really something that's helpful about the action plan is just to be really explicit about who is taking on each of these tasks and a realistic kind of time frame of when it might happen. So, you know, we don't expect that there's going to be some like miraculous thing that happens overnight. There's really, what we really want is a realistic time frame of when folks can actually take on kind of a test or a pilot action plan. And then what is the goal? What are we trying to achieve? So having some transparency around like what, you know, why we are taking on this action plan and why we're implementing something a little bit differently. And then again, how long to test it. So, you know, a small reversible change. Folks have probably heard that a couple of times on these learning sessions. You know, we are not looking for an overnight transformation. We're just looking for, you know, some small changes that we can make to our business process in order to take steps towards improvement. And then here is that PDSA cycle that I've been talking about. And just again, a reminder that this is really about, so the P in the PDSA cycle is the action plan, and then the do is just trying it out. A 90-day cycle is what we typically recommend, but you might not need that much time, or you might need more time depending on what you're implementing. And then you want to check it. You want to check and see how it's working. And when we talk about checking it, checking is not just about looking at data. Checking is also checking in with your staff and seeing how it feels. You know, getting some anecdotal information, like if your whole team is unhappy about this new action that you're implementing and you're not seeing kind of improvement in your performance metrics, then that is a reason to not continue to implement that action. Because it's a small reversible change, you can just say, we're going to stop doing this and we're going to try something different. So you don't, the idea isn't to get stuck in something that's not working. The idea is to revisit it. So if it's not working, you can try to do something differently. And then if it does work, that's great. And then we figure out how to standardize it into our business process, which really means making sure that everybody is, you know, doing the thing that's working in their regular workflow, workday. The other tool that we have added in this toolkit is a meeting agenda. And again, we think that the meeting agenda is important because we want to make sure that we have the right people at the table when we're having these conversations. The lean practice really believes in including the doers of the work when we are working on continuous improvement efforts. So it's important that the folks that are responsible for working on the action plan are included in, you know, when we're having discussions and making decisions around using data as in our continuous process improvement efforts. And, you know, again, because dashboards are limited to folks that have the security privileges to access them, thinking about, you know, who to include in the meeting in order to make sure that they're getting information that could help them with their work and their jobs. We've also included some discussion questions in your kind of sample meeting agenda and the toolkit, kind of just helping to get some brain juices flowing around what dashboards people might find to be useful, and how dashboard data might supplement other data reporting that you're already tracking, figuring out kind of what data you're wanting to look at on a regular basis that could be helpful for you and your tracking your workload. And then again, the frequency of how often we want to check them and the best way to share dashboard information. When we were thinking about meetings, the other thing to think about is how, so for example, you could have a standing meeting that includes some time to do some value stream mapping, some time to do some action planning, or you could really kind of incorporate a like 5-minute check-in on this PDSA cycle into your regularly scheduled meeting. So if you're already doing a weekly huddle, this could just be one kind of brief agenda item that you talk about. So again, small bites, doesn't have to be a big kind of, you don't have to have a full staff retreat to figure out how to incorporate data into your continuous process practices. It can just be, you know, small bites and helping build good habits. Okay, we're getting really close to small group discussions, and really what we are focusing on and what we'd like to have you be thinking about in small group discussions is how you're communicating data across your teams. So just to kind of get it ready to put your kind of thinking caps on and to be sharing in small groups. Again, if there, and this doesn't have to, I'm happy to open it up to data in general for those of you who have other reporting options, but thinking about kind of what the best way to share dashboard information is, what you're checking and what you're finding valuable or what you're finding helpful when you're looking at your data reports, the best location to share information, and if you have any best practices on how you're sharing data to help your team with their workload. These are all of these are options on the table in our small group discussions. So really we're just hoping that you all find some tips and tricks from each other that you might want to take back to your teams and incorporate into using data, dashboard data or other data, and figuring out how to incorporate that into your continuous process improvement efforts or practices. So any questions or thoughts or burning ideas before we break into small groups? We're gonna probably break into 2 groups because we're not a super large group today. And we will give at least 10 minutes in the small group for discussion. Okay. Okay, Erica, I think we're ready to launch whenever you're ready to send
Yep,
us the link.
absolutely. And just, I'll be giving y'all about a 1-minute warning when it's time to return to the main room, and that happens automatically as the clock counts down. So what doesn't happen automatically is joining the room. So you'll receive a prompt and enjoy.
Thank you, Erica. Did we all make it back? Looks like it, yeah. All right, let me pull up the screen share again. Anybody want to share what you discussed with your small groups? Report out. Maybe I'll get started from our small group discussion. So I think, and please jump in, David and Michelle and Kirsten. What we talked about is really how we see quite a bit of potential for the dashboard tool for sure. I think there was some discussion about whether or not there should be something that techs can access themselves so that they can get kind of daily data on how things are going for them. But there was also some questions about whether or not dashboard data is validated. So one of our participants actually had, they double checked their data with their other reports that they use and it was spot on. And another county checked and it was off by like hundreds of in the numbers. So there's some questions there about how dashboard data is validated as well. And also what some of the options for filtering might be. So filtering by users might be a really helpful tool for folks to be able to look at, and maybe considering how dashboard data might supplement kind of other reporting that's already happening in your sites. Anybody else want to share? Christina, do you have folks, do you have talkers in your group that might want to?
Well, I was just gonna summarize the highlights and give folks a chance to chime in. So really what we talked about was that folks are really using dashboard as something to give them the high level view of what's happening, and then following up with Cognos reports to just diagnose things specific to a technician that might need some more training support or other kind of technical assistance. And that most of the ways that they've used it so far have been individual rather than changing their process as a whole. And then in Logan County, they use this regular list of reports to run that helps them, you know, kind of standardize what they're looking at on a regular basis. So the supervisors all do that. But most of at the end of the day, a lot of what they're doing is working with folks one-on-one. So it's a little different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that when things, you know, improve, they share that out at staff meetings or individual meetings. So, you know, definitely letting folks know that progress has been made.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. We have to celebrate the successes too, right? Yeah. Yeah. Anybody have anything else to add? This is, we are getting ready to wrap up. So this is the last opportunity for you to share your thoughts with your peers and colleagues. Any last golden nuggets of knowledge to pass on? Okay. This next step will be a familiar step for you as well. This is where you get to tell us how we did today. So you'll have both an opportunity to complete a poll, and we're looking for any feedback you'd like to share in the chat session as well. So things that you liked today, things that you might consider taking back to your team and implementing, or if you think that there is an opportunity for us to make improvements on this workshop, we are definitely open to your feedback as well in the spirit of continuous improvement. So while you're working on giving us your feedback in the chat and in the poll, I just wanted to do one last plug for the performance improvement team. If you have any questions, or if there are, if you're looking for any support from them, they are still going to be around even after our friends at PCG and Kone are done with this work. So we're wrapping up at the end of June, but Arturo and Vanessa and Nicole are still at your disposal. So we really encourage you to think about reaching out to them if there are, if you have other things that you're feeling kind of stuck at with your, at your county, or looking for some opportunities to make improvements in your business processes. Feel free to email folks at the Performance Improvement team. I just really want to thank all of you for spending some time with us today and in the last couple of weeks. We know obviously that there is a lot going on for all of you at your different sites respectively and in the world, and so we just really appreciate you being willing to spend some time with us and being willing to think about opportunities to make improvements and make work easier for you and your teams. So thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thank you, Erica and Christina, too. It takes a team.